So as you guys know, because I've done videos on this, Jordan Peterson is effectively a climate change denier through and through. He couples basically the climate change issue with crazy lefties, and he couples it with people who are on the side of trying to save the climate as this far left group, and that's the idea that they have. And that's something that he does with virtually everything that he doesn't like. And we know this because he sent out a tweet where he literally cited a PragerU video. That was literally what he tweeted out. He tweeted, you can check out the videos I made, by the way. He put out a bunch of climate change now garbage. He legitimately cited a PragerU video as his evidence. And he said something like the capitalist hating liberals or something like that aren't going to like this. First of all, it's a dumb statement because you're just trying to muddy the issue as if it's some issue of just these crazy environmentalist lefties. But on top of that, dude, your evidence is Prager University, not a non-accredited university. That's your source. Are you kidding me? That's a joke. So he's just a straight up active climate denier. He's literally posted like 8 different things on Twitter of climate BS, where I think one of them was like why CO2 in the atmosphere is good, like more of it. So this guy's just a full-on just crazy person on this issue, and it's hilarious. And I can't help but anytime that someone is in opposition to or doesn't believe climate change is happening and is actively in opposition and trying to disprove that climate change exists, I lose a lot of respect for that person, because it's one thing to have a differing opinion on something like healthcare or something like economics or something like that, but it's another thing to just outright deny science. And while California is getting destroyed by these fires after being in a drought just a couple years ago, and you're just going to deny science, it's laughable. It's laughably dumb. Like, I lose massive amounts of respect for you. He's also tweeted out climate change propaganda with the graph where it's cut off to make it look like there's been no temperature gains. It's hilariously dumb. But we're going to be looking at something really interesting, a claim that I hope I don't know how this would be resolved, because if you ask Jordan Peterson, he's just going to repeat the same thing. I guess the only way would be to talk to, I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name. I think it's Balseal. I don't know. I have no clue. But basically what you're going to be seeing in this clip here is Jordan Peterson is going to make the claim that he rewrote the Canadian portion that was given to the UN, this climate change report, because he was, I believe, like, he was the psychologist who was, the CEO of RIM was using. And he's going to make the claim that he rewrote the underlying narrative to take out, he says, ideological claptrap. So go ahead and check this out.
I worked on the UN Secretary General's High Panel for Sustainability, the report that was delivered in, I believe, 2013, and rewrote the underlying narrative to strip out most of the ideological claptrap.
Drought, flooding, and ocean acidification, unanticipated for 65 million years, all result from climate change, according to over 700 of your fellow scientists. So I was wondering whether you thought climate change could be an issue that could unite us all on left and right, moving us beyond debates about C16 to discussions at the UN at Katowice next month, where perhaps humanity might finally discover its global map of meaning.
No. I mean, there's a couple of reasons. I mean, the first reason is that I spent a lot of time reading. I worked for a UN committee for 2 years on sustainable economic and ecological development, and read a very large amount during that period of time and learned a lot, much of which made me much more optimistic than I had been before I read the relevant literature, which was a real shock to me. But the climate change issue is an absolutely catastrophic, nightmarish mess, and the idea that that will unite us that's not going to unite us. I mean, first of all, it's very difficult to separate the science from the politics. And second, even if the more radical claims are true, we have no idea what to do about it. And so, no, And besides, it's even worse than that. Here's one of the worst things about the whole mess is, so as you project outwards with regards to your climate change projections, which are quite unreliable to begin with, and the unreliability of the measurement magnifies as you move forward in time, obviously, because the errors accumulate. And so if you go out 50 years, the error bars around the projections are already so wide that we won't be able to measure the positive or negative effects of anything we do right now. So how in the world are you going to solve a problem when you can't even measure the consequence of your actions? Like, how is that even possible? And besides that, well, what's the solution? What are we going to do? Switch to wind and solar? Well, good luck with that. Just try it and see what happens. We can't store the power. Germany tried it. They produced more carbon dioxide than they did when they started because they had to turn on their coal-fired plants again. That wasn't a very good plan. Well, we don't want nuclear. It's like, okay, what happens at night? The sun goes down. Well, isn't that something we should have taken into account? Oh, we got to flip on the coal-fired plants. Well, so it was a complete catastrophe, and all that happened was the price of electricity shot up. There's like zero utility. So that's not a solution. So what are we going to do about it? Well, we should cut back. We can't consume as much as we are all consuming. It's like, well, maybe, except the data that I've read indicate that if you can get the GDP of people up to about $5,000 a year, then they start caring about the environment, and the environment cleans up. So you could make a perfectly strong case, I think, and a reasonable one, perhaps even a humane one, that the actual idea would be to get everybody in the world who's poor, desperately so, out of poverty as fast as possible, which would increase consumption in the short term, because then they'd start to care about the environment and things would clean up. It's like, okay, well, what are we going to do about global warming? Well, good luck figuring that out. I don't see a solution on the horizon. I look at Bjorn Lomborg's work. I really like Bjorn Lomborg. I think he's a real genius. You can look him up if you want. He took the UN millennial goals. There's 200 of them. That's way too many goals if you're serious about goals, by the way, because 200 goals isn't a plan. It's a wish list. You have to prioritize. I'm serious. You have to prioritize. But they won't prioritize because each of the goals has its constituents. And if you prioritize, then you irritate the constituents. But if you don't prioritize, then you can't implement the plan. So what Lomborg did was gather a teams of economists, multiple teams, some of whom were Nobel Prize-winning economists. He had them assemble teams. He had them rank order development goals in terms of their return on investment, all of the teams. Then he averaged across the teams and came up with a final list. And addressing global warming wasn't even on the list. The most fundamental, he wrote a book called How to Spend $75 Billion to Make the World a Better Place, and that's not very much money on a global scale. Almost everything that he recommended had to do with increased child nutrition in developing countries. It's like, these things are complicated, man. These are complicated. It's like, well, let's fix global warming. It's like, okay, well, good luck with that. First of all, how are you going to do that? And to think that will unite us, well, certainly not uniting us so far. So, no. And it's the kind of low-resolution thinking that just gets us absolutely nowhere. I like what Lomborg did way better. I think it's way more intelligent. So, maybe if you increase child nutrition enough and you produce another, 10 million geniuses as a consequence of that, and maybe one of them will figure out what to do about global warming. Well, I'm serious about that, It's not a bad thing to increase the total sum of human brain power, And so...
Yeah, so that's a pretty hefty claim. So the clip you guys saw, there was also him talking about climate change recently. So there are multiple issues to talk about here. So first of all, does anybody actually believe, because there's no actual evidence that he rewrote the underlying narrative to take out the ideological claptrap? There's no evidence of that because he's not credited with that. But why on God's green earth would a clinical psychologist, rewrite the narrative for a climate change report? What? Dude, that is screaming a breaking of the common sense bar. It doesn't make any sense, even in the slightest. It's hilariously dumb. There's no way that a psychologist has done that. And if they had, there would be an actual footnote there. Now, the other argument you may be saying, oh, well, no, you're just wrong. He's not. He did do it. Well, where's the evidence that he actually did it? And B, if and your other argument may be, well, he can't talk about it if you ask him because it's confidential. Well, then why did he divulge that he rewrote the underlying narrative? That's pretty damn confidential if you ask me. But the most hilarious thing about, you just saw the climate change bit that he was talking, where he was talking about climate change. He furthers the evidence against him because he says, oh, well, we don't know what to do about it. Hold on a second there, bucko. There were something like 56 recommendations in that report from Canada, that the portion that was given from Canada and submitted to the UN for that report. 56 recommendations of what to do. And you're telling me you don't know what to do, or that the literature doesn't have anything to do? But I thought you rewrote the underlying narrative to get rid of the ideological claptrap. Oh yeah, really? Totally, you totally did that, right? Which there's no evidence of whatsoever. That's hilariously dumb. And again, this guy is so shady. I don't know why he's choosing to die on this hill. It doesn't make sense. But here, let me read you guys. His response to the guy's question. The guy basically asked him, will climate change unify us? Here's what he said. I mean, there's a couple of reasons. The first reason is that I spent a lot of time reading. Oh, the Candace Owens thing, huh? I worked for a UN Committee on Sustainable Economic and Ecological Development and read a very large amount during that period of time and learned a lot, much of which made me more optimistic before I read the relevant literature, which was a real shock to me. But the climate change issue is an absolutely catastrophic, nightmarish mess, and the idea that that'll unite us, that's not going to be uniting us. First of all, it's very difficult to separate the science from the politics, and second, even if the more radical claims are true, then we have no idea what to do about it. How do we not know what to do about it if the paper that you rewrote the underlying narrative to get rid of the ideological claptrap had 56 fucking solutions? Okay, dude, you're a joke. I don't know how to... You telling me a clinical psychologist rewrote a climate change report from Canada? Are you kidding me? What a joke. And then let's get into his claims about climate change, right? So the biggest issue about this, it's a massive exaggeration. It's just a lie that he said that he rewrote it. There's no evidence whatsoever of that, and all of the mounting evidence is against him, okay? But he's trying to make himself an authoritative figure on this issue. I know a lot about climate change, and man, we can't do anything, even though the claim that I'm making is I rewrote an underlying narrative, and somehow that paper had 56 recommendations, but we don't know what to do. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make any sense. Literally none. It doesn't make any goddamn sense. So this guy is lying, and I don't understand what the appeal of Jordan Peterson is. Even his self-help garbage. One of his, I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. But anyway, I'm not going to try to divulge, try to get into that. I'm going to stay on topic here. So he says it's difficult to separate the politics from the science. This is a talking point used by climate change deniers to muddle the waters and to make an effective stalemate. Okay? Because when you say that, politics is a never-ending issue. And it's one where there's a constant battle going on. And so when you invoke politics and say, well, we just can't separate them, what you're basically saying is that, well, nothing we can do about it. And then he says we don't know what to do. But the paper you rewrote, I should put in quotation marks, had 56 recommendations. That's hilarious. The idea that obviously there are things to do, okay? And it's obviously in the scientific literature, and we know that. Okay, there are things that we know what to do. One thing he's right about, actually, funny enough, is that, I don't think climate change is going to unite us until literally areas in Florida are underwater. I think he's right on that. I mean, first of all, people are dumb, and then B, our legislators and our government, people in power, are bought by those people who have interest in climate change not existing. So I don't think it's going to unify us. He's right about that. But his arguments in saying that, we don't know what to do, or that, It's hard to separate the politics. Like, who's the one muddying the waters with the politics? It's not the left. It's the right. You're the one muddying it with politics. That's what you're doing. That's literally the entire Republican Party is bought out by the fossil fuel industry. A lot of the basis of it is based on fossil fuels. The Koch brothers, the famous bankrollers, are frackers. It's in their best interest. And to be fair, a ton of the Democrats are sold out by them too. That's a true statement. That's true. And that's a problem. But the response to climate change isn't, we know that there's climate change. What you're trying to do is act like it's like, it's still up in the air. The jury's still out on it. No, climate change exists. It's real. It's happening. And no matter how many PragerU garbage videos that they do, this fake university, non-accredited university, this guy's just a full-on sellout for the fossil fuel industry. That's what this guy is. He's just a total cuck. That's what this guy is. There's no other way to put it. I mean, this is the guy who's supposedly super smart, doesn't even understand like basic science. He literally sent out a piece. And by the way, all the BS climate skeptic websites are like super random. They have no backing to them. It's really weird. There's no legitimate website with any sort of credibility that puts out climate skeptic nonsense. And obviously websites like Steven Crowder's website and that garbage author Courtney, who's literally the worst writer I've ever seen in my entire life. No exaggeration whatsoever. So Jordan Peterson is attempting to effectively obstruct the movement to actually save the climate. So Jordan Peterson, dude, you're just a fraud. But I mean, I never had any hopes for you anyways, though. I mean, you don't seem to have any redeemable traits. Remember, this guy came out against Brett Kavanaugh. What'd he do? Backed away. He backed away after his own fans came after him. So does he really care about mob rule, or does he only care about it when it hurts his pockets? Rhetorical question.